I'm Eric Branco, and you're listening to the Cinematography Podcast.
The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Well, hello, Ben.
Howdy do.
Howdy do to you too.
How's it going?
Are you ready for another fine episode of the Cinematography Podcast?
Oh yeah. I'm wearing my special podcasting cod piece and everything.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah, ain't nothing getting in there.
It's your chastity belt.
Yeah,
of podcasting.
So Ilya, who do we have on the show today?
Oh, we have the fantastic Eric Branco returning for the second time. Delighted to have him on to speak about his new television series, Let the Right One In, currently available on Showtime. You should totally go.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, have you been watching it?
Yes, I have been watching it, and you should know that Let the Right One In might be like one of my favorite movies of the last 30 years. And when I heard that they were doing a series about it, like you do a lot of times when someone's...
You cringe.
You're like, what else needs to be said? You know, like there was a perfectly cromulent movie version of it made in America called Let Me In, which is actually the direct translation of the novel it's based on, the title of it. And I remember seeing it and being like, this is good. If I hadn't seen the Swedish version, I might love this. But the Swedish version looms so large, it's like,
yeah, it's good.
You know, it's like when you hear about people remaking Suspiria. Like you go like, why not just go ahead and remake Blue Velvet? Like why would you remake something that was just done so perfectly the first time? So what's interesting about the TV series is it's kind of just extending the world out. And it does it in a very clever way. I was very impressed with it. And I think it looks good in a look that throws back to the movie without being restricted to the palette of the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think it enlarges the world, and I think it does it in a fun and incredible way. And I don't want to say too much about it because we talk about it at length in just a moment. So, but first, Ben, we should get to our close focus.
Oh, man.
What do we have to talk about for close focus today?
I mean, like, oh, God. I mean, like, we're heading into award season, and we're going to have all kinds of great stuff to talk about. But I feel like we would be remiss to not mention the situation with Kanye West.
Yay?
Which is, yeah.
Wait a second. Isn't there always a situation with Kanye? Isn't that kind of like the rule?
Yes, but I feel like this is the one he doesn't come back from, or at least not in the same, like, he doesn't need to come back. He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, he can do whatever he wants for the rest of his life. He's fine. He could quit tomorrow. And like, I have to cop to being not the most rabid Kanye fan, but you know, back when we bought albums instead of streaming albums, I bought a few of his albums. I liked his music. I liked some of his collaborations with people like Jay-Z. I really thought he was pretty good. And
less so today, huh?
Well,
no one can see Ben's face, but Ben's eyes just basically bugged out of his head when I asked him that question.
It's nuts because he's just going on this tear of anti-Semitism and just doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. And the news, as we're recording this today, is he was repped by CAA and they dropped him. Which, like, imagine being an agency dropping a client who makes $1 billion or who's worth $1 billion. You're just kissing off probably tens of millions of dollars a year, and it's because of the horrible anti-Semitic comments that he made. And it's not just that. It's like he's just making these weird moves. And the thing is, like, I partly feel just bad for him because we all know that he suffers with, I believe it's bipolar disorder. I don't know. I know that he has a history of mental illness, and I want to have compassion for him. And I do think he's a pretty good recording artist. I think his opinion of himself is higher than my opinion of him, but whatever. But man, oh man, I mean, he's just like self-immolating in ways that Mel Gibson could only dream of.
You know, I was going to say, maybe part of the reason that Kanye has gone off this deep end is that he's playing golf with Mel every Tuesday. Maybe it's bowling. I could have it wrong.
Bowling.
I actually don't. I don't know.
Bowling
actually,
with Mel.
This is fake news, but there is something wonderful, I think, about the visual of like Kanye and Mel Gibson having their own sort of like anti-Semitic bowling league. You know, I can just see them like with their, their official like bowling shirts, and it's some sort of like
see if they can get like Kevin Sorbo and Chachi to join.
That'd be quite the anti-Semite bowling team. Yes, well, Kanye may not come back from this. I'm sure another agency will pick him up. I mean,
someone's going to certainly. I mean, in the same way that Mel Gibson has still had a film career after what he did,
and returns. Mel Gibson just had a movie come out recently. So,
but if you notice, I don't want to cast aspersions on any of it. It's like Mel Gibson's star just violently sank to the bottom of the ocean. And so he would do stuff like The Beaver or what was that film that Johnny Durango shot, The Old Man?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Johnny Durango, who was on the show a long time ago.
Yeah, we're overdue for having back. But
hell yeah.
Now if we talk about Mel Gibson, he's going to be like, I'm not coming back on that.
We got to have Johnny back at some point. Well, I mean, the thing is like it's not that Mel Gibson became a bad actor or a bad director or a bad anything, but I feel like when you go and his
tirade
pissed in
the pool.
His tirade wasn't just anti-Semitic; it was anti-black. It was, it came up that he had a history of abusing women, and he called a cop sugar tits. Like,
you know what? That's a term of affection. It really is.
I guess. But, it definitely dinged up his career a lot. And, with Kanye, the question is, does it ding up his career? The fact that he's trying to buy uber right-wing racist social media platform Parler.
Yeah.
All the weird stuff he's suddenly doing. And he was on this podcast saying a bunch of this anti-Semitic stuff. And there's a video feed. You can watch the hosts kind of like, at one point, Kanye says, well, I don't think all Jews are bad. And one of the hosts is like, yeah, you need to say that. Say that again. Say that louder. And
God, I haven't watched any of this. So you are now giving me my first taste of it. I'll have to go watch it after this podcast.
It's really interesting because, it's just like some poison got into his brain. And it's like we were all kind of willing to go with it when he was just, wishing death on Pete Davidson. And you go, well, Pete Davidson's with his ex. But
not anymore.
Not anymore. But also it's like, should we have been okay with him, making a music video in which he decapitates Pete Davidson? Like, maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe you and I are giving him sunlight right now that he can grow with just in our own little way. But I just kind of feel like in the entertainment business, we'll put up with a lot of character quirks, but there are certain lines that you can't walk back. And I sort of feel like blatant racism is one of them. And one of the other things about him, too, is that in an interview with, I think it was Piers Morgan, he claimed that he pitched Django Unchained to Jamie Foxx and Quentin Tarantino as a video for his song Gold Digger. And it's like, even I, who had nothing to do with any of this, knows that Tarantino actually wrote Django Unchained with Will Smith in mind in the lead, not Jamie Foxx. And Jamie Foxx is in that video. But it's like, why are you taking credit for stuff you really didn't do? Like, what the hell? I feel like he needs help. And I actually feel like being a billionaire enables you to refuse help. And he needs help more than he ever probably has in his life.
Let's just ask Harvey Weinstein. Anyway, so Ben, I think that we have exhausted the Kanye conversation.
Not even, kinda, but yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the interview.
Let's get on to the interview with Eric Branco.
All right.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Eric Branco, welcome back to the Cinematography Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Hey, you have got a new series called Let the Right One In, which, of course, I would say is either inspired or in some ways sort of a new adaptation of the original IP to the 2008 Swedish film, which I loved. I thought it was great. And I know that it got remade into this American movie. I never saw that one. I don't know how that was. But I've been watching yours, and I'm about halfway through this series, and I love it. It is so good.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
It is so much fun. So was it as much fun to shoot? Was it as much fun to make this thing? How did this whole process go?
Yeah, so I saw the original movie totally walked in blind. Didn't know what it was about. I hadn't seen the trailer. friend was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see this Swedish vampire movie." I was like, "Great, see you there." And walked out of the theater like completely blown away. It's like a top 10 movie for me, hands down.
Isn't that great? Isn't it so much fun to actually go into a movie completely blind, not seeing the trailer, not knowing anything about it? I mean, if it pays off, if it's one of those like great movies, I feel like it's so much better than actually being hyped about seeing a movie because you've got no expectations. I mean,
Totally.
your expectations are nothing. So that
Exactly. Yeah, like some of the best like movie-going experiences are those movies where I was like, I gotta kill 2 hours. This looks interesting. And then I walked in and like just have a great time.
So Let the Right One In, I think, was a visceral experience for a lot of people. It is not what you expect. You don't expect child vampires. And I don't really feel like I'm giving anything away since now this has been out there in the culture and the zeitgeist for certainly long enough. But what I love about your new series is you're not just telling that story again. You've got a new story and it's set in New York. And you got an incredible cast. Why don't you give our listeners the really short Cliff Notes version of this new series?
Yeah. So the new series, for those of you that have not seen the original movie is about a little girl that moves in to an apartment complex and befriends kind of a lonely, bullied boy. You find out kind of through the course of the movie that the little girl is not a little girl at all. She is a hundreds of year old vampire who you think might be her grandfather or whoever else is kind of her handler because she can't move through the world as a child. And the movie is kind of on the surface, kind of a love story between these two kids, but also a kind of very predatory kind of tale. So with that as the basis, our show takes place much earlier kind of in the timeline. This girl has only been a vampire for 10 years. So she's in reality about 22. But kind of the way it treats vampire lore is that when you become a vampire, your growth is stunted, not just physically, but also somewhat mentally. So she doesn't act like a 22-year-old. She kind of acts like a child. She is still, a child. So she's relatively new to being a vampire, and her father is the one kind of going out and collecting blood for her at night and keeping her safe and making sure that she doesn't become the monster that she has the potential to become.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your approach to this, because now you've got some original aspects of the IP, some inspired aspects that you're inheriting. Did you look at the visual style of the original or the remake at all to influence what you're doing, or did you just decide that you had how did the look come about? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the look came about. I know the first movie by heart, and I have seen several times and still very much enjoy the second movie. Hoyte van Hoytema shot the first one. It's kind of the movie that put him on the map. And then Greig Fraser shot the American remake, which is kind of the movie that put him on the map. So it was, it's some large footsteps to follow.
I've never heard of these guys. No, of course.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
kidding.
Exactly.
Well, that's a wonderful feather in your cap too, that they entrusted you to this project after those luminaries, of course, did the first two. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, the short answer is I watched both movies a couple times. The Swedish one kind of as a refresher because I know it so well. And the American one, I had seen it a few times when it came out and liked it, but I hadn't seen it in 10 years or so. And it's interesting. I feel like the Swedish one is a little more like austere and pulled back in its cinematography. Very cool, very sparse. The American one was shot anamorphic. And so there's some of that texture in the image that I don't feel like was there in the original. And the American one feels very warm in its kind of like sodium vapor nights.
It's a wonderful color palette too, though. When you're going through the conceptualization of this, are you working with the costume designer, the production designer to try to figure out your color palette for all of this? Can you talk a little bit about how you settled on this blue-green and this sort of look?
Yeah, I mean, everything kind of stemmed from this idea that the outside world is not safe and kind of the safe place is in the home. So
the apartment,
the home the home is very warm, tungsten light, and outside is very kind of cool blue-green, except for the kitchen sink has a light kind of where he does his like, the father kind of cleans out his blood jug and stuff. We did put like a really green kind of like, light over that to bring a little bit of that into the house.
I was particularly struck by how cohesive everything feels and how there was such a great job of world building, and that I know this is a pandemic production with children, and there's so many different ways that this could have been a incredibly difficult and arduous series to shoot. But I think that there's something that's in my brain about when I'm really enjoying something, I think that everyone who made it must have also been enjoying the process of making it too. But I know that's not always the case. I know sometimes it can be really difficult and it can be very cold. And now with all of the additional aspects from COVID protections and everything else, if you were to put a scale of 1 to 10 on production, because I feel like if 10 is just super easy, everything is slotting into place exactly how it should be, and 1 is like, oh my God, what am I doing here? How smooth was a production like this? Which it looks to me like it must have been amazing, but I don't know.
I mean, there were some crazy, crazy challenging days. I'll speak about the pilot in particular. We shot the pilot, which takes place in the winter at night. We shot on the summer solstice.
Oh, wow. The longest sunny day of the year you guys shot.
So, which hilariously, the year before on the winter solstice, I was shooting a summer day exterior.
That's awesome.
And then 6 months later, I was shooting a winter night exterior on the summer solstice. So, I mean, that meant that
that's the reality of the job, though. DPs are always asked to do this. It's like, hey, guess what? We're shooting nights and you need to do all day interiors. Or guess what? We have to do a day exterior. Or guess what? We have to. So on the longest day of the year, you had a mostly night shoot.
We had an entirely night shoot
Yeah.
with a miner who had to be out at midnight.
Wow.
But being a night exterior meant that we couldn't start shooting until 9:30 or so. The sun is set at like 8:45 and then it's still quite blue in the sky for like another 45 minutes.
That's right.
So we had essentially like 2.5 hours to shoot everything with this kid, who is a phenomenal talent.
She
Madison
really
Baez is her name. She's amazing. But yeah, I mean, those night exteriors with the kids were some of the most rushed things I've ever shot. And I mean, it's really a testament to our director, Cease, and the actors that we were able to pull it off as well as we did. I'll dive into one more insane shoot. They end up going to Coney Island, which was another, I think the kids had to be out at 10 and the sun set at like 7:30.
God.
And we're out in Coney Island with maybe 400 extras.
Yeah.
It was still the winter time. It was like just coming out of winter. It was like April maybe, but it wasn't open yet. And so they opened up Coney Island. They turned on all the lights of the park we were shooting at, of Dino's, which is where the Wonder Wheel is, and the 2 parks on either side. And we had to get all our Coney Island work done with these kids in like 2 hours or so. It was, I think, a 5-camera day.
Wow.
One of our operators, Catherine Castro, was roaming around getting B-roll while we shot the scenes. We were shooting the kids up in the Wonder Wheel, and so that our cameras wouldn't see her, we had her followed around with a hot dog umbrella. So she's running around getting like handheld B-roll. Made sure we had somebody holding a Nathan's hot dog umbrella over her, so that if the cameras ever looked down, we wouldn't see our crew shooting.
You know what? When you have such a truncated schedule with kids, though, do you find that bringing in the extra cameras is the way to try to get your coverages done as quickly as possible? You've got to get as much as you can in there. So you say it's a 5-camera day. Can I assume that, A through E cameras are rolling all the time? Then when it wasn't just like, oh, it's a camera and then we've got maybe a second angle or we've got this specialty thing. No, you're covering it 5 different ways.
Yeah. I mean, days like that, it's one of those things where you kind of look at this impossible task and you're like, okay, we scouted, I want to say maybe 3 times. We were there, boots on the ground in the spacing, phones out, cameras out, picking angles, things like that. And then back in the production office, we have a 4-foot overhead map and we're dropping cameras, and the art department of production design saying, okay, I'm going to have a camera here. Our intro into Coney Island is they kind of like walk from the boardwalk through the amusement park and land at like a strongman game. And so we kind of had to strategically not only place cameras so they can see each other, but, we talked to an art department about bringing in things that would block, if you can build me something that'll hide camera B from camera C, we can get the whole thing in like 3 takes. So it started as a Steadicam shot, which then pivoted, turned, it became like a profile dolly with the Steadicam falling back a little bit, just out of frame of our other shot. They land in the coverage, other cameras run in, and everything's on rolling tripods. It's, a well-oiled machine.
Okay, so there's obviously a trade-off when you go with that many cameras to cover, and you're covering so that you can try to maximize the time between setups, because if you've got all the cameras that can be built at once and you can rehearse it a few times and then go, that's all the ways that you didn't have to move that. I'm just giving a little explainer here for anyone who doesn't work on set and doesn't understand the time-saving aspect here of exactly what you just described, being able to strategically plan things. And some shots get ruined because the other cameras are there. You obviously can't show that, but there's a trade-off of the initial prep for all those locations and then the rehearsal, because it gets much more complicated than using a one camera. If you have your druthers, if you have your choice between taking larger, complicated sequences where someone has to move from point A to point B, is it more satisfying to break out the multi-cameras and choreograph this thing? Or would you prefer to have all the time in the world and move and change and tweak lights for each camera individually? Because I find that there's different opinions on this. Where do you fall on the spectrum?
I think it's probably a project-specific thing. I think, you get different things from both. Do you know what I mean? There's something like deeply satisfying about, having a character walk up and land in like a perfectly lit close-up. And you're like, this is exactly how I want this face lit. It's like a very satisfying thing. But it turns more into, like a team sports when you're doing this kind of like crazy 5-camera setup, 2-take scene or something like that, where it's like your lighting is not going to be, I'm not going to use the word perfect because, what is perfect, but
it's perfect. You
make
it's
compromises.
Perfect.
You make compromises, in certain places kind of for the greater good. And I will say that there is like a rush of camaraderie amongst the crew when it's like, we have this thing that should not work. When you look at it on paper, it shouldn't be possible. And we show up at 2 p.m. and we build cameras and we rehearse. And we feel comfortable and we go to lunch. Everybody's at lunch with the jitters, and then you come back in, you rehearse a couple more times as the sun's going down. And then, the second that sky is kind of blue, you start shooting, knowing that, your first 2 takes are kind of your like imperfect lighting, kind of still a little bit daytime waste takes. But then, you get maybe a couple takes and then you just nail it. And, you can feel that kind of, you feel the rhythm, you feel the build of tension and then release and celebration when you get it. It's always nice when you do a scene and like the crew is clapping at the end of it. You know what I mean? Like it's a different thing than, this like kind of like one camera perfect methodical thing.
Yeah, you pull it off. When you pull off the trick shot like that, everyone kind of knows like what they just witnessed, what they just got done. And then that's like, sometimes you got to rely on the script super or someone who's there to go like, okay, no, we didn't cross the line. A and B is going to work. All right, that's great. Yeah, we got all the pieces. Hey, all right, and celebrate.
Exactly.
But I think that in a lot of productions, particularly scripted production, you don't always get the chance to pull that off. And what an incredible cast. Demián Bichir, Annika Noni Rose, and the kids are incredible too. Madison and Ian and Nick Stahl, like coming out of nowhere. I hadn't seen him in ages. What an incredible cast. Can you talk about how satisfying it is to see such high caliber actors in front of your lens every day when you're working on this?
Yeah, it's amazing. First of all, it's just enjoyable to watch their performances every day. It's just enjoyable to be at work and be at the monitor and just watch it as an audience member. Sometimes you have to stop and be like, okay, like stop watching the scene. I gotta
pay attention to the lighting here.
Line, yeah.
Was there dolly track in that shot? We gotta pay attention here. Yeah.
But it's amazing. And I think, from a cinematography perspective, actors of that caliber, I think challenge you to be better because, they've been on set with the best and you need to match that energy. I like to have a open, trusting, and well-respected relationship with the actors that I work with. I think a lot of that trust is built on my end, especially when you're shooting things in like a slightly unconventional way, like we are a bit on this show, at least for kind of TV coverage. It doesn't quite look like a network procedural. So
no, far from it. That is not at all the thinking. And you've got all like the tropes of a police procedural. Like there, you've got detectives and homicide and and bodies and stuff. But it doesn't feel like those procedural shows at all. No, it
exactly.
Really does. It feels like something wholly into itself, which I think is great. So
I'll kind of back it up and go through the way a scene is shot. So we come in, say it's the first shot of the morning. I will have spoken to our rigging crew. So kind of broad stroke lighting will be in place when we show up. If we're on the stage, we have our daytime look set, our nighttime look set, things like that. At 7 a.m. or whatever it is, the look is based on the call sheet, based on what the scene is.
You've got it's
roughed in.
Yeah.
At that point, actors come to set, sides in hand. We do a read through of the scene. The scene gets blocked. I'll sidebar, confer with the director. we have our shot list, and if there's something that is not working for what our shot list was, I'll quickly have a sidebar with the director of, okay, that's not quite going to work. The way, she walks across the room isn't quite going to work with our plan. How do you want to fix that? Do you want to fix it on the blocking? Do you want to fix it on our end? The director will make that call. The AD will say, okay, what are we starting with? We'll say, let's start with one camera on a wide dolly and another camera ready for when she crosses, it can become her close-up. Okay, break. Everybody goes away. Actors go get ready. Lighting department comes in, lights. We get our cameras framed up and roughed in. And then kind of this crew goes to work. And when the actors come back, just a personal kind of, belief of mine, I want the actors to feel like it's still their space. I want it to still feel the way it should feel for them as an actor, rather than have them, cross over a multitude of things to get to their mark. And they can only hit that mark. And if they're off by, 6 inches, the shot's ruined. And I do that DP thing where I'm like, hi, and I flip this, spin the camera away. It's everything's fucked. I want them to, feel like they, when they.
I appreciate a little drama. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. I angrily throw my scarf over the other shoulder and I storm off.
You've rumpled my ascot.
So, that's part of the way I build trust with actors is they come back on set and they do 2 takes and they're like, you know what? I think I really should sit down. I go, yeah, cool, great. Sit down. I'm still good for it. Let me do a 2-second tweak on this light, rather than it's not a 20-minute change. Or I don't say, I'm sorry, the lighting, I'm not prepared for you to sit down. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Which is a very real thing.
As parodied quite well in Living in Oblivion, if you ever saw Chad Palomino
Totally.
decide, you know what, I've decided this whole scene's going to take place on the floor. So, what?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is an obscure reference for our listeners. If you haven't seen Living in Oblivion, go see that. Go see that. Yeah, you'll be in on all the jokes. So, but you're right. If an actor suddenly decides, you know what, I don't want to do this standing here, I want to do this over here, and you're not prepared for that. If you haven't lit the shot in that, they might be standing completely in darkness. And I've seen that happen more than once on really, really big shows where an actor suddenly decided their creative inspiration was to walk, nearly off the set, or to walk to some place or do something in a place that wasn't a thing. I have to say that, though, I think there's some discipline. And then when you have really good collaborators, the relationship between the actors and the camera department, I want to say, is like almost no other, because it is a dance that goes on every time the camera's rolling, even I would say when it's a lock-off shot, because you've got focus pullers and all the other stuff going on. And if your lighting isn't prepared for this, then it's just not going to work. There's got to be a lot of serious trust and respect that goes on. At least that's always been my experience.
I can always kind of tell when trust is building. There's always like a moment where like an actor will make eye contact with me, or they'll come, going back to kind of like the sitting or standing example, they'll come over to me quietly and be like, are you cool if I sit down? You know what I mean? And I'll be like, yeah, great. I'm all set for it. And I think that's, and they're like, okay, cool, thanks. But no one, they came to me first about it because they don't, we've built a relationship to the point where they don't want to put me on the spot if they decide to, do you know what I mean? If they want to switch something up.
If you're not prepared, then you can't follow them. That takes blown. So, yeah.
And so that trust kind of builds slowly and gradually, where not only am I doing my work with them in mind and their ease of work in mind, but they're also, conscientiously doing their work with my ease of work in mind as well. And then, when you get into that place, then you're in a good rhythm.
And conversely, if you don't have that rhythm, if you don't have that trust, if you've got an actor who is deciding that they're going to just kind of do what they want, or maybe they like, I'm only speaking from personal experience because I worked on a bunch of, really, really crappy indie films with a lot of actors who'd maybe never acted before.
We all have.
It's a really different experience. It's like, I think it's really hard for an inexperienced actor to fake that set acumen and that ability to work with all the different departments. And I would say working with camera probably in some ways, because the camera's rolling and you only have those moments to get it right, and especially in the era of film, but really no difference now, you have to have a plan, and everyone has to be in on that plan in some way. Otherwise, it's just failure. And I know this might sound a little bit nebulous or abstract, but like, have you ever had the experience where the actors wouldn't just do their thing or try to develop that rapport?
Oh my God.
Or,
I've worked on, I mean,
you don't have to name any names, but tell me how do you deal with stuff like that?
I could name all the names because you would know. The difference between being an actor who's known and being an actor who's not.
Well, I worked with an A-list actor when it was one of the very first things in their career, and they didn't have any of that. So I will never name them, but it's everyone starts somewhere. So how do you deal with, like, I think a lot of people out there, they have to be able to approach diplomatically the conversation with the talent, what it is that they need, and how you're going to get what you need from the talent. How do you deal with that if you've got something that's not working?
I think, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but I'll tell a brief story about an unnamed actor, wildly talented, very well known, but made his name in television. Pre kind of HBO days. I think TV was a little different. I'm saying pre-HBO days. I mean,
pre-1975?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around a long time.
I was saying in the pre kind of like Sopranos, TV Renaissance, when like TV started being shot like and looking like movies. Things were done, I think a little differently, and it was less of a cinematic experience. Had an actor who kind of came up in TV. We're doing a movie, and it was kind of one of these very austere shots where things really play out in like a medium master, and then they come and they sit down across from each other, and and we're not changing anything. They come in, they come sit down, and they lands in an Hoover close up on the other character, and I put a tape mark down on the ground. This is our line to say, don't cross this line. Like, if you cross this line, the other actor's shot is busted.
Yeah.
Point out the line here. Hey, this is what this shot evolves into, and so if you come in and lean that way in your chair, that's a bust. And he looks at me with this kind of like,
indignation.
Yeah. And he's like, the camera's not, you don't have a slider. And I don't know where I got the chutzpah to respond in this way, but I said, no, I don't. We're making a movie. This guy who at the time was probably, 3 magnitudes of my age, kind of looks me up and down, and he kind of smirks, and he's like, okay, all right, so here's the line I came across. That's it. And he was like, okay, great, here we go. And then kind of after that interaction, which, could have gone
Oh, it could have gone a couple of different ways. Yeah, but you know what? You stood your ground.
He was kind of like, okay, all right, this guy's, we're gonna be okay.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. I love that. So I'm actually taking this interview in a slightly different course than some of our other ones because, one, you and I know each other, and I always enjoy our conversations. I think this is a lot of fun. But I think, and we're a little guilty of this on the podcast lately, we've been like, happy talk. Boy, this is such a great project. But you are such a dynamic communicator and open book that I feel like it's really fun to get into some of this minutia and to talk about some of these other things. Are there any other stories that are similar to the one you just told regarding the, being the young guy on set with sort of the old guard, that you've had that experience before where it's like, wow, I have to defend myself here. I have to let people know that I am serious and a professional and that perhaps my young appearance has nothing to do with that. And I am wise beyond my years. Have you encountered such things before?
Yeah, it's been my entire career. I started working on set professionally when I was, I think, 19. Mm-hmm. And then, I was working on little indie features in New York where like nobody knew anything. So I kind of quickly got put in a position of leadership. I mean, within like a year or two, I was key gripping projects. I was gaffing projects. I was a gaffer for a long time. I was probably gaffing when I was 21, gaffing features. You know what I mean? Which is like, I grew a beard.
Yeah.
So people would, you know what I mean?
Oh yes. That is a very typical tactic I know of men, at least in this industry, trying to, because there is this stereotype of the grizzled DP and the grizzled gaffer for that much. It's like, oh, you want that guy because he's been around a lot. But, that's really difficult to play against that prejudice or preconception when you're the young guy coming up. And especially you're really talented because someone looks you up and down and goes like, oh yeah, what could, come on. How many production days or hours could you have under your belt? But let me tell you, working the grind, especially like in indie cinema, like I know that you did, like in New York,
Yep.
you get really good really fast, or you get chewed up and spit out. So that's
absolutely.
There's no in between.
And I have a lot of close friends that I used to work with that are not in this industry anymore.
I think we all do. There is a certain legitimacy that comes from longevity. Just by the fact that you are still here, all these years later, means that you are actually doing something very right. So that is.
I did it when I was probably. Telling this story might get me in trouble. I'm not going to name names.
Okay.
I worked with a DP who was very much one of this. I don't know how I got on this job, but he was probably in his mid 70s, maybe early 80s. Had those letters after his name.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the first ASC DP I worked with. And so I came to set and I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And this guy just didn't care at all. And like, I kind of learned on that day, I was like, if you just stick it out long enough,
yeah,
you're gonna be okay. Which, I think at this point maybe I have. But it's interesting being kind of the young guy, because I was the youngest guy on every set I was on, and then I was the oldest guy on every set I was on, and then I kind of broke into like the next
level.
New level, and I'm back to being the young guy on set.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Eric, I know that we are running out of time, but I want to tell everyone that Let the Right One In is now playing on Showtime. You can go watch this on Showtime. It started on October 9th. There's several episodes that are out now. I know I've been watching them, and everyone should go watch it because, damn, it's fun. It's really, really good, and it's perfect for October. So if you're in a Halloween sort of vibe or anything like that, then absolutely you should be watching this. Go watch Let the Right One In. Eric, where can people find you in the online world if there is a place that you exist? Can people look you up somewhere? Are you on socials?
Generally Instagram is where to find me.
Okay.
Eric Branco is my handle on Instagram. ERIC BRANCO.
And we'll put it in the show notes at Cam Noir. And thanks so much for being on the show again. It was great having you back.
Thank you. Always great seeing you.
All right, that was Eric Branco. Eric, that was so much fun. I'm so glad you were able to come back on the show, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
And everybody, if you have Showtime, check out the Let the Right One In series. And for God's sakes, go watch the original Let the Right One In. Yeah. Shot, I believe, by Hoyte van Hoytema, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
God damn it, what a brilliant movie.
Yeah, it's really good. All right, Ben, it is bill paying time. We got some bills to pay.
All right.
And we got to thank our fine friends over at Arri. Arri, they make cameras, they make lighting.
You may have heard of them.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people don't know that they actually make also a lot of lenses that you can buy. Some lenses just for rental, and they have a new rental facility in New York that just opened, and they haven't announced it yet, but if you go to the FD Times Instagram, there is a picture of the new Heroes lenses from Arri, which appear to be rental only, and there is a third geared ring. So of course, in a prime lens, typically you have a ring for your aperture, to set your t-stop. You have a gear ring for your focus. So, close focus to infinity. So you have the ability to make sure your image is in focus. This prime lens has a third geared ring towards the front, and it looks like it is to adjust the element spacing inside the lens, the air gap, as it were. So you can change the look of the lens on the fly without having to take the lens apart.
So what do you mean change the look of the lens? I don't follow this at all.
Okay, so it looks like, according to this photo here that's on the FD Times Instagram, and there is a witness mark, which basically gives you your setting. It tells you where it is. And then there's a bunch of numbers between what looks like 0 and at least 8. And if you were adjusting the air gap element spacing inside the lens, you're physically moving elements into or out of alignment from each other. And this can change the characteristics of the lens. It can change where your focus fall off is. It can change how resolute or how sharp. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's all kinds of things you can do if you screw up a lens. I was
this many years old before I knew that this was even a thing you could do.
Well, it's not usually a thing you can do on the outside of a lens. It's not something you can do on the fly. Typically, if you want to make a lens worse, you have to take it apart, stick some shims in there, and push and pull the elements into a position that's less ideal. Clearly, Arri has come up with a plan here to be able to do it on the fly. So I don't know what happens if you rack in and out the coherence of this lens, making it the images more resolute or more contrasty or whatever, because once you start moving things around, all bets are off. You can completely ruin a lens. My guess is they probably chose some very specific characteristics that this adjustment controls, and I don't know how it works. All I see is this photo, but it's something that I think is going to get a lot of buzz here in the coming weeks.
I just want to say that I never heard of this until you just started doing this ad read now. And now this is the only thing I've ever wanted to put my hands on in my entire life. I want to see what this does.
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes on Cam Noir to the photo so people can check it out and see what I'm talking about here. There's 3 geared rings on a prime lens. It's a 57 millimeter, and it looks really cool. So I wish we could see what was in it.
57 millimeter?
Yep. 57 millimeter.
Is that... I've never did I just start doing this now? I've never even encountered a 57 millimeter lens.
You have, if you've ever used a zoom lens, you can adjust yeah.
Oh yeah, no, of course, yes. I have zoomed through 57 millimeters. Maybe I've even parked it at 57 millimeters, but I've never encountered a 57 millimeter prime lens, much less one where I could mess with coherence.
Yes, that is something that you can do with this lens, it looks like, but I haven't seen it in person. I don't know exactly how it works, but this was an ad for Arri before we started this banter back and forth. And I still think it is an ad for Arri. Arri's doing...
It never stopped being an ad for Arri. I just want to see this lens.
It's very innovative. It's really not like anything else out there. And I'm sure that in the coming days and weeks, there'll be more information available. And another cool thing from Arri. Surprise, surprise, Arri did something innovative and cool. There you go.
Crazy.
And now, short ends.
So Ben, it is short end time of the show. What is your obsession, assuming it's not the Arri Heroes lenses? What is your...
I mean, it is now. That's all I want. When you get one of these in, can I come in and play with it? I just want to see
Absolutely.
it.
You're absolutely welcome to it. I will ask, we're going to have an Arri event in November, and I will ask the people at Arri in person what's going on. Maybe someone, if it's not out by then, maybe someone can give me some more information.
I just turned into Huell Hauser over this lens. I'm very excited about this lens.
Hey, check out that lens. We're here to see
exciting.
Historic flagpoles and lenses. For anyone not in Southern California in the 80s or 90s or early 2000s, Huell Hauser was a PBS host who walked around with a very distinctive voice, and there is some documentaries about him. He had a show called California's Gold, and in fact, if you go to YouTube and Google California's Gold, you'll get more Huell Hauser than you know what to do with. Very, very... Yes.
Let's just say that he could come across the most mundane thing ever, which was not a third ring on a 57 millimeter lens, by the way. And he would find unbounded enthusiasm for that thing, whatever it was.
It's really true. He was enthusiastic about whatever you put in front of him. I remember watching him get palpable about date shakes in Palm Springs.
Nice.
Yeah. So
they'll make you regular. So let me, so my short end this week is a horror movie. Surprise, surprise.
That's a first.
Terrifier 2, which I will start by saying I haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
But Terrifier 2 is the newest film that school marmish parents group kinds of people and pearl clutching news outlets, like if you Google it, you'll find Fox Detroit horror film Terrifier 2 is causing viewers to puke, faint in theater. Producer warns of graphic violence.
Oh my God, that you cannot pay for that publicity. People are going to flock to the theater to see that now.
This movie was made for $250,000, which is one order of magnitude more than its predecessor, the first Terrifier, had. It was made for $25,000. Wow. This was made for $250,000, and I'm not avoiding it. I just haven't had a chance to see it, but I feel like I have to say something about it because, well, firstly, a friend of mine, Steve Barton, is one of the producers on it, and I could not be more excited for Steve, but... how long has it been since we've had a new slasher film bad guy? And now we have Art the Clown. And I feel like the first Terrifier didn't do it, but this one did. On a $250,000 budget, this movie has already made like $5.1 million. Wow. And it's been in the top 10 for like the last month.
What? Oh my gosh.
And it's kind of a little engine that could kind of a thing. Stephen King, no less than Stephen King commented on it. And Steve told me it's a pretty extreme movie. Like, they do some pretty dark shit. But I'm both excited about it and also, like, the marmish people who feel that horror movies are destroying our brains will never learn officially, because all they want to do is tell you how this stuff rots your brain, which is like telling a 14-year-old that they must seek this movie out, that nothing will be better than seeing this movie that some oldster told them was going to ruin their mind. And again, I haven't seen it. I can't really comment on it. I saw the first one. When I found out the first one had been made for $25,000, I was blown away because it looked like it was like at least a $500,000 kind of movie, at least minimum. And it's because the director does like all his own special effects makeup and stuff. Like he's basically does everything. His name is Damien Leone. And I have not met him. I hear he's a cool guy. But anyway, it's not a big deal that horror movies have been occupying a big space in October in the theaters. What's interesting is that even Halloween Ends started at number 1, dropped to number 3, or dropped to number 4, I think. And Smile is still kind of holding, I think, at 3 right now. People are going for non-franchise stuff that they have not. I mean, I guess Terrifier 2 is technically a franchise, but probably for most people who are seeing it, it's the first Terrifier movie they've seen in the theater.
Yeah, or maybe their first Terrifier movie ever. Maybe they didn't see the first one.
Yeah. So what is your short end this week?
Well, this has been sort of an ongoing obsession for me. It's called Welcome to Wrexham. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
So it turns out, this is true, Ryan Reynolds, famous movie star, television star, and entrepreneur behind, Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin, got together with Rob McElhenney, who is, of course, one of the creators of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, star of that show. They got together and bought a soccer team in Wales. And to go along with buying the soccer team, they documented the entire process. And that is now a TV series on FX called Welcome to Wrexham. And I binged like the first 3 or 4 episodes. I could not get enough of it. It was so entertaining, had so much heart, and in some ways it kind of feels like the real Ted Lasso. It's not Ted Lasso. It's not trying to be Ted Lasso, but it kind of feels like it. And they make soccer, or football, as how much of the world refers to it, accessible to anyone and makes you feel like you are there, part of the journey. And I like soccer. I like it in theory. I enjoy certainly watching some soccer, but I would not consider myself a hardcore fan. I don't go out of my way to watch Premier League. I don't go out of my way to watch the local, US leagues. But that being said, I'm loving Welcome to Wrexham, and I actually feel more inspired now to support my local teams. So I got to say that they don't treat it like a typical documentary. They kind of mix it up and they throw in different styles of episodes, and it's just a lot of fun. Everything about it made me think I would not like it, and I love it. So it's been really good, and I can't wait now to finish out the season. I'm very excited.
I wonder if I should take the challenge because it takes a lot to make me care about sports.
Yeah. Well, I think you might like this one because it's really an underdog story. And it's a great one. It's a great underdog story. And there's some very, extremely charismatic people behind all of this who are really trying to clear their hearts in the right place. And they want to do some things that previous owners of this particular football club were not able to do. And so yeah, I got to say it's entertaining. It's fun. You'll know in the first episode or two if this is going to be for you or not. But if you could get behind something like Bad News Bears, I think you could get behind Welcome to Wrexham.
And what makes you think I could get behind Bad News Bears?
It's a classic. It's a effing classic. You could totally get behind the original Bad News Bears. Did you not get behind it?
No, I did. I was just giving you a hard time.
I was going to say. And what a great, satisfying ending in that movie. If you've never seen the original Bad News Bears, get to it. Yeah, I don't care what you think you know about sports movies. Watch that one. That's one to watch. And then Moneyball. Those are probably, I think,
Moneyball's pretty great.
Yeah, 2 best baseball movies ever made. Anyway. Okay, so Ben, I think that just about does it for this week. Where can people track you down if they want to track you down?
Well, this week they should track me down at Audible and check out my new series Catchers, which drops tomorrow, October 27th. My series Catchers, which is a
all
super
about
fun,
baseball. It's all about that guy behind home plate.
It is not about baseball at all. It's about dog catchers versus monsters.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun. Stars Billy Gardell from Mike and Molly and Bob Hart's Abishola fame. And I could not be more proud of it. I'm really excited for people to hear it. We're starting to get some responses from people who've heard it. And I'm very excited. I'm actually going to be on one of my favorite podcasts. I'm going to be on The Gist on the 27th. So the day that it launches. So I'm very, very excited. So please go there. And failing that, go to benrock.com and find a link to Catchers on my website. You can also find my Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff there too. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
Right now, you can find me over at Hot Rod Cameras. It's 10:40 at night, and I'm at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. Sponsor of the show. You might have heard it mentioned once or twice during this podcast. I know the British lady talks about it at the beginning and the end every time. So
she says you're in Hollywood, and actually you're in Burbank.
You know
I just
what?
want to point that out.
As far as the rest of the world is concerned, this really is Hollywood. This is Hollywood.
I mean, you're kind of near North Hollywood.
You know, we also share a border with Hollywood. And frankly, if you want to talk about like the production capital, it's Burbank. It's not Hollywood.
I agree. I just think that, if we want accuracy, we should bring the British lady back and say from Burbank, from gorgeous downtown Burbank.
Well, let me tell you, if you zoom out like 3 notches on Google Map, you can't see a difference between Burbank and Hollywood. It's like it's right there.
Okay, I don't know that I follow your logic.
I'm just saying that outside of outside of this 10-mile radius or maybe 15-mile radius, I'll even give you 30-mile radius. Most people can't distinguish Burbank from Hollywood. It's all the same.
Okay, so what you're saying is you're really in Northridge. So anyway, Ilya, who do we have to thank?
Let's thank Alana Cody. Alana Cody kicking the butt, organizing our show, getting our stuff going. Yeah,
we have so many interviews going. I'm doing one of them tomorrow.
I did one today. So yeah. More to come. We got to thank Ben Katz, who's editing all these shows together. And Ben will be very glad. I did a really good job today. I don't think I'll have to edit it at all. So that was wonderful. And then let's thank Kays Alatraci, who was really just on the show like a few weeks ago. You can go catch that show and you can listen to and find out all about Kays. And I actually spoke to someone yesterday who said that they felt like they learned a lot about Kays that they never knew before after listening to his interview. So that was great.
Very cool. Well, I mean, like, did they know a lot about Kays before that?
The person had been in Kay's living room, so they had met. So
I can take a few guesses as to who it was.
It was former fill-in host of the show and guest of the
Bill
show.
Totolo. Yeah.
Bill Totolo has been in Kay's.
That would have been my number one guess.
Yes. So anyway, and he said he really enjoyed the Kay's episode. He said they thought it was
Excellent.
great. So anyway,
Hey, Bill, how's it going?
So Ben, I think that just about does it. You want to take us out of here?
Thanks for listening.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.